So there I was, Marcus Webb, a human rhythm specialist with absolutely no business being anywhere near a space station, standing in the command center of the Starbridge outpost, orbiting a star system that was basically the galactic equivalent of a dying houseplant. The curators and the Zul Collective had been staring at this problem for 3 years, 3 months, and 11 days. Not that anyone was counting. Well, they were definitely counting. These aliens count everything. The briefing document they sent me was about as welcoming as a colonoscopy performed by a robot with anxiety. It said, quote, "Desperate times require desperate measures. We are requesting a human consultant for reasons we find deeply embarrassing." That's right. The most advanced civilizations in known space needed help, and they needed it from a species that still argues about the best way to cook an egg. The Starbridge itself was magnificent. I'll give them that. Imagine a structure the size of 3 football stadiums made entirely of crystalline material that catches light like a disco ball, designed by someone on a serious acid trip. It hung in space, rotating slowly, humming with energy that nobody seemed able to unlock. For 3 years, the brightest minds in the galaxy had been poking at it with everything they had. Sophisticated mathematical algorithms, quantum computing systems, theoretical frameworks that would make your brain leak out your ears. Nothing. The bridge remained stubbornly, infuriatingly silent. Commander Vex was waiting for me when I arrived. She was a curator, which means she looked like someone took a praying mantis and gave it a military uniform, an attitude problem, and access to advanced weaponry. Her exoskeleton clicked and clacked as she walked, and her compound eyes managed to look disappointed in me without having any facial features to work with. "That takes talent. You are the human Marcus Webb," she said. It wasn't a question. Her species doesn't really do questions. They just declare things as facts and expect the universe to agree. "Last I checked," I replied, doing my best to sound confident. "Though I'm open to the idea that I'm someone else, if that makes this easier for everyone." She didn't understand the joke. Curators don't. They're mathematically brilliant, but comedically bankrupt. Their idea of humor is a perfectly executed proof that makes all the other curators click their mandibles together in what I assume is laughter. "The Starbridge requires activation," she continued, leading me through corridors that all looked identical. "Our best scientists have attempted every theoretically sound approach. All have failed, catastrophically, in one case, literally." That last bit wasn't reassuring. I was about to ask what literally meant when we arrived at the observation deck, and I saw the bridge up close for the first time. It was even more stunning from inside the station. The crystalline structure seemed to pulse with its own light, deep purples and blues flowing through its core, like blood through veins that belonged to some cosmic organism. "What exactly does it do?" I asked, hoping the answer would make some kind of sense. "It opens stable wormholes," Vex said simply. "It is the key to faster-than-light travel without the physics-breaking consequences that plague conventional jump drives. It was discovered deactivated in the outer regions of the Killik system. Our preliminary scans suggest it is ancient, possibly millions of years old. And nobody left you a user manual? User manual? Never mind. So it opens wormholes. How do you activate it?" Vex led me to a section of the bridge where the crystalline rails gleamed under the station lights. They were smooth, perfectly geometric, and absolutely hypnotic in their symmetry. "This," she said, gesturing to the rails with one of her spindly limbs. "The bridge must be activated by rhythm." I blinked. "By rhythm?" "By rhythm," she confirmed, her mandibles clicking slightly, which might have been the curator equivalent of frustration. "Tapping the rails in a specific pattern initiates the activation sequence. However, we have been unable to determine the correct pattern. We have attempted mathematical progressions, sequences derived from prime numbers, harmonic frequencies calculated to 7 decimal places. Nothing has worked." That's when it hit me. That's when I realized why they called me. A human. A creature whose entire evolutionary advantage seems to be the ability to find things groovy. They'd been trying to solve a drum solo with calculus, and they wanted a drummer. The briefing room was all sleek surfaces and ominous red lighting, like someone's idea of what a spaceship should look like based on watching too many human science fiction movies. Around the table were Commander Vex, Dr. Impulse, and approximately 17 holographic displays, showing graphs that made my eyes hurt just by existing. Dr. Impulse was a Zul, which is to say he looked like someone took a squid, taught it physics, and gave it an unhealthy amount of enthusiasm for everything. His tentacles were gesturing wildly as he talked, knocking over what appeared to be virtual coffee 3 separate times. The Zul don't really understand personal space, but they make up for it by being genuinely excited about literally everything. The Star Bridge is the most significant discovery in recorded history, Impulse was saying, his voice making that weird, clicking, whistling sound the Zul use for communication. When activated, it creates stable wormholes with a bandwidth theoretically capable of supporting transport for thousands of vessels simultaneously. But the activation sequence is the problem. The bridge seems to respond only to an organic rhythm pattern, not to mathematical precision. Organic rhythm, I repeated, trying not to smile. You mean like a beat? A groove? A beat, Impulse said, his tentacles drooping slightly. Yes, we have attempted to replicate a beat. However, our attempts have been failures of catastrophic magnitude. This is where Vex pulled up the first video. It showed a Kerator, all precision and mechanical accuracy, tapping on the rails with what looked like perfect mathematical intervals. There was a pause. Then the bridge did something that I can only describe as having a seizure. Alarms screamed. The crystalline structure flickered between colors that didn't technically exist. 3 scientists ran away screaming. One of them was still blue. That's attempt 147, Vex said flatly. We have not attempted to restore his original coloration. It is a reminder of the stakes involved. The next video was somehow worse. They'd strapped some kind of automated system to the rails and had it tap out the Fibonacci sequence. It actually worked for about 7 seconds, and then the bridge opened a tiny wormhole that was only slightly larger than a mouse, went cross-eyed somehow, and everything within a 30-meter radius got stuck in a time loop. They eventually freed everyone, but the effect cost them 17 hours, and one Zul scientist who kept insisting he had only been in the loop for 5 minutes. There was a lot of debate about that. We have tried whale song frequencies, Impulse continued, now showing a video of the bridge being blasted with recorded ocean sounds. The result looked like the bridge was having an existential crisis. Chunks of crystalline material started rotating in directions that violated at least 3 laws of physics. It took them 40 minutes to shut it down, and they lost a probe in the resulting spatial distortion. Okay, I said, holding up my hands. I get the picture. You've been smashing buttons and hoping for the best. We have not been smashing buttons, Vex said, her antennae twitching. We have been systematically approaching the problem with rigorous scientific methodology. Sure, that too. But here's the thing, Commander. You're all thinking about this wrong. You're treating the bridge like it's a puzzle to solve, like there's a correct answer written in the universe's instruction manual. But you're missing something fundamental. What is that? Impulse asked, all his tentacles perking up with interest. The bridge isn't a puzzle, it's a person, or at least it acts like one. It wants to be understood, it wants to communicate. And you can't communicate with something on its level if you don't speak its language. You're all speaking math, the bridge is speaking rhythm. Vex's compound eyes managed to look skeptical, even without having actual eyes. The bridge is a stellar engineering construct, not a sentient being. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe after sitting around for millions of years waiting for someone to figure out how to wake it up, it developed a personality. Stranger things have happened. I once knew a guy named Derek who taught his dishwasher to play jazz. The point is, rhythm isn't about mathematical precision, it's about feel, it's about intention. It's about understanding the soul of what you're trying to communicate with. Soul, Impulse repeated, and I could actually see him getting excited about the concept. The bridge has a soul. I'm saying it acts like it does, and that's what matters right now. Vex was quiet for a moment, her mandibles clicking softly. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before. We are prepared to accept any methodology that produces results. How do you propose to proceed? I looked at the bridge hanging in space beyond the observation window. It was still humming, still pulsing with that internal rhythm that had been calling to me since I arrived. "First," I said, "I need to get close to those rails, and I need to listen, not with sensors or instruments, with actual ears, with instinct, with something that your species lost somewhere between discovering calculus and building the first star drive." "And if you fail," Vex asked, "then you'll be exactly where you started, minus one slightly embarrassed human. But if I'm right, you're about to understand why an allegedly primitive species like humanity has managed to survive in a galaxy that wants to kill us at least 14 different ways." Before I got anywhere near that bridge, Vex insisted on showing me the full extent of their failure. It was like watching a blooper reel directed by someone who didn't understand what comedy was, but accidentally made it hilarious anyway. The first set of experiments were technically the most impressive. They'd built an automated tapping system with precision to the microsecond. It had tapped out the digits of pi for the first 500 places. The bridge responded by opening exactly 7 wormholes simultaneously in random locations. One of them ate a coffee machine, and one of them appeared to open into someone's shower on a planet 40 light-years away. That caused some diplomatic incidents. Then came the phase where they tried natural frequencies, ocean waves, bird calls, the mating ritual of a creature from Zol Prime that apparently sounded like 2 accordions having an argument in a wind tunnel. The bridge didn't like any of it. It sulked. Literally sulked. The humming decreased, the light dimmed. And according to the logs, the entire structure seemed to vibrate at a frequency that made everyone in a 3-kilometer radius feel inexplicably sad. There was one particularly memorable attempt where a young Kerator scientist had hummed what he considered a cheerful mathematical theorem set to melody. The bridge opened a wormhole that was shaped wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. Wrong, like it was in 3 dimensions when it was supposed to be in 4, or vice versa. The probe they sent through came back slightly inside out. Not harmed exactly, just arranged in an order that violated the usual conventions of anatomy. I watched all of this from the observation deck with an expression of what I hope looked like professional interest and not barely suppressed laughter. Dr. Impulse kept narrating the failures with the enthusiasm of someone describing a particularly tasty meal, despite the increasing body of evidence that his species had been attempting to torture an alien artifact. And this attempt, Impulse said, gesturing wildly to a screen showing a particularly chaotic video. We tried the harmonic frequencies of the Zol collective mating call. In retrospect, this was perhaps not the ideal solution. The video showed the bridge vibrating so violently that objects were flying off the walkway. Alarms were screaming. At one point, someone got launched into a wall hard enough to leave an impressive dent. The bridge had essentially rejected their mating call and made it clear that it wanted nothing to do with them on that level. "You tried to seduce the bridge?" I asked. Not entirely sure I'd heard that correctly. "Not seduce," Vex interjected. "We simply hypothesized that a sound of intimate Zul communication might resonate with the bridge's core frequencies. You tried to make the bridge fall in love with you. That is an oversimplification. I spent the next 3 hours watching failures cascade into increasingly absurd territory. They'd tried Morse code. They'd tried the mathematical constant, known as tau, as a rhythmic sequence. They'd even tried what appeared to be the entire catalogue of a human musician named John Williams, purely on the theory that if music could move humanity, maybe it could move an ancient alien artifact. The bridge remained stubbornly unimpressed by all of it. But here's the thing about watching all those failures. It wasn't just depressing or hilarious or frustrating. It was instructive. Because underneath all the failed attempts, I could start to hear something. It was subtle, buried under the noise of explosions and alarms, but it was there. The bridge had a rhythm. Not in the mathematical sense that the curators understood, but in the way a person has a heartbeat, a steady, patient pulse that was waiting for someone to recognize it. By the time the briefing ended, I understood something that 3 years of quantum computing and advanced mathematics had missed. The bridge wasn't broken. It was just lonely. It was tired of being poked and prodded and analyzed by species that refused to understand its language. It wanted someone to listen. The crystalline rails were even more impressive up close. They felt warm under my fingertips, like they were alive, like they were waiting. Around me, the station's lights were dimmed, and the only sound was the steady hum of the bridge itself, that deep, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate in my chest. Vex and Impulse were watching from the observation platform above me, along with approximately 40 other scientists and military personnel who'd been assembled to witness either my triumph or my spectacular failure. Possibly both. "You're sure about this?" Vex asked through the communication system. "Absolutely not," I replied. "But standing around doing nothing isn't working, so let's see what happens when someone actually tries to understand the thing instead of calculating it to death." I took a breath and placed my hands on the rails. They were humming, resonating at a frequency that seemed to match my own heartbeat. It was weird. It was intimate in a way that nothing involving an ancient alien artifact should be. I started with something simple, a basic blues rhythm. Just my fingers, tapping out a pattern that my dad had taught me when I was a kid. The kind of thing you use to keep time, to establish a groove. Boom, boom, tap, over and over, steady and patient. The bridge responded immediately. The internal light grew slightly brighter. The humming increased in pitch. I was communicating with it. Actually communicating. Not commanding it or calculating it or trying to force it into some predetermined pattern. Just saying hello in a language it understood. I built on that foundation. Needed complexity. Started mixing in jazz signatures, the kind of syncopated patterns that make math people deeply uncomfortable because they are not predictable in the traditional sense. The rhythm became more intricate. I could feel the bridge responding, starting to match my tempo, starting to anticipate where I was going next. It was like a conversation where both parties were genuinely interested in what the other had to say. The scientists watching from above were losing their minds. I could hear them through the comms, overlapping each other with excitement and confusion. Vex was documenting everything with that mechanical precision that Kerators love. Impulse was making sounds that I'm pretty sure violated several noise ordinances. But I wasn't paying attention to them anymore. I was focused entirely on the bridge, on the rhythm we were creating together. I tapped out something more complex, a pattern that seemed to emerge from pure instinct rather than conscious thought, a rhythm that felt right, that sounded right, that vibrated at a frequency that seemed to touch something fundamental in the structure's core. The bridge began to glow. Not just the internal light, but the crystalline structure itself started phosphorescing. Waves of color flowed through it like liquid energy. The humming became harmonious, creating chords that shouldn't have been possible from a single structure. It was beautiful. Honestly, genuinely beautiful. I found myself smiling without even realizing it. This ancient alien artifact, millions of years old, sitting in space waiting for someone to understand its language, had found someone who spoke its dialect. I tapped out the rhythm faster, building momentum. The bridge responded by opening small portholes into dimensions I didn't have names for. Not dangerous, not threatening, just opening windows to show me that it understood, that it was communicating back. The light intensified. The entire structure was vibrating now, in perfect sync with the rhythm I was creating. Every tap of my fingers sent waves of energy cascading through the crystalline lattice. And the bridge was singing back, literally singing, creating harmonics that seemed to come from somewhere deep within its quantum core. For the first time in 3 years, in 3 million years maybe, the star bridge was awake. Not activated in some technical sense, alive, conscious, connected to someone who understood it. "It's working," Impulse whispered, his voice full of awe. "It's actually working." The rhythm reached a crescendo. I could feel it building, feel the bridge building with me. And then, with one final perfect tap that seemed to echo through dimensions I couldn't see, the entire structure crystallized into a specific configuration. For a moment, everything was silent. Everything was still. And then, in the space before the star bridge, a wormhole opened. Not chaotic, not dangerous, perfect, stable, shimmering with light that seemed to contain all the colors that had ever existed and several that didn't have names. The wormhole was inviting, welcoming. It looked like stepping through it would be the most natural thing in the universe. I took my hands off the rails. The rhythm stopped. The wormhole remained stable, still open, still waiting. Well, I said, breathing hard and trying not to sound as amazed as I felt, I guess that's what happens when you actually listen to what something is trying to tell you. The command center erupted into chaos that was actually organized, which is somehow the curator's specialty. Vex was barking orders. Impulse was vibrating with excitement, so much his tentacles were making it difficult for anyone to walk past him, and scientists were frantically scanning the wormhole to verify that it was in fact real, and not just an elaborate hallucination brought on by 3 years of failure. But I was still down by the bridge, my hands resting on the still warm rails. I could feel something pulsing through them. Not just physical vibration, intent, recognition. The bridge was acknowledging what we'd just done together. "Run another sequence," Vex commanded, appearing on the walkway beside me with the grace of a military commander who'd never done casual in her entire life. "It doesn't work that way," I told her, not looking away from the rails. "This isn't like a button you press and get the same result. The bridge is responding to rhythm, to intention, to the feeling behind the pattern. If I just repeat what I did, it won't have the same energy. It won't mean the same thing." "Affirmative," Vex confirmed. "Additionally, the revelation that your species possesses a cognitive ability that our most advanced computers cannot replicate has significant economic implications. If humanity can access and operate the Starbridge network, which previous analysis suggests spans at least 3 major galactic sectors, humanity's position in interstellar commerce and travel would be substantially elevated." That's when I realized what was actually happening. Humanity wasn't being invited into galactic civilization as a junior partner or a curiosity. We were being recognized as having something valuable, something that no amount of math could replicate. And that something was our fundamental, almost absurd ability to feel when something was right. "Here's what I'm thinking," I said, sitting up in that terrible chair. "You guys need humans to operate this bridge network, fine, but that means we want a seat at every table. We want representation on the Galactic Council. We want trade agreements that acknowledge the fact that what we're providing is literally irreplaceable. And we want other species to start looking for similar applications in their own technology. Because I'm betting this rhythm thing goes way deeper than just one bridge." Vex made a sound that might have been contemplation or might have been approval. It was hard to tell with curators. "Those terms are acceptable," she finally said, "subject to approval from the Council." Over the next weeks, I trained other humans in the basics of bridge operation. Some of them got it immediately, others took time, but the fundamental principle was always the same. You had to listen, you had to feel, you had to understand that there was something in the universe that operated on a level beyond calculation, and you had to be comfortable with that uncertainty. Impulse attended every session. He never got to the level of proficiency that humans could achieve, but he was starting to understand something that his entire species had been missing. That consciousness wasn't purely logical, that there was value in the things you couldn't calculate or measure, that sometimes the answer to the universe's greatest mysteries wasn't a formula, it was a heartbeat. One night, about a month after I'd first stepped up to the bridge, I found myself alone in the observation deck. The star bridge was humming its steady, patient rhythm. In the space beyond it, wormholes opened and closed as different operators ran their shifts, all of them learning to communicate in a language older than civilization. I placed my hand on the cool glass and thought about all the ways humanity had been underestimated. All the times our apparently illogical, chaotic, rhythm-obsessed nature had been treated like a liability. Turns out it was an asset. Turns out the universe had been waiting for someone who could understand that not everything that matters can be quantified. The bridge hummed louder, almost like it was laughing. And I found myself laughing too, because sometimes the most important solutions don't come from the smartest minds. They come from the weird ones. The ones who think things should have a groove. The ones who believe that everything, even the universe itself, needs to learn how to dance.